The morning sun was still soft when Emily Carter stepped off the bus. She held her resume carefully inside a worn folder, clutching it as though it were something fragile. The city was already awake, humming with the rhythm of footsteps, horns, and hurried voices. To Emily, it all felt a little overwhelming. She smoothed her blouse, adjusted her skirt, and glanced down at her shoes. The leather was scuffed. The seam near the sole had begun to tear. No polish could hide their age, no careful cleaning could disguise the fact that they were her only pair of formal shoes. She had thought about borrowing another, maybe from a neighbor or a friend, but pride and timing had stopped her. These would have to do. Today was her interview at Harrison and Blake Enterprises, one of the most respected firms in the city. She had read about the company for years, always imagining what it might be like to step inside their tall glass building. Now the dream was close enough to touch. Though her hands trembled at the thought. As she entered the lobby, the marble floors seemed to echo with every step she took. The space was bright, filled with men and women in polished shoes, neatly pressed suits, and confident voices. 33 candidates, all waiting for the same opportunity. Emily counted the numbers when she signed in and tried not to lose heart. She took a seat in the waiting area, her folder resting on her lap. Around her, conversations bubbled in low tones. A few candidates scrolled through their phones, some reviewed notes, and others leaned back, radiating an ease Emily could not share. She kept her eyes lowered, but not low enough to avoid the stares. Someone chuckled, and she realized it was about her. Her shoes, those tired, torn shoes, had already betrayed her. "Look at that," one young man whispered, tilting his head toward his friend. "Couldn't she find anything better for today?" A woman across the room smirked. "If she can't even dress properly, how's she supposed to fit in here?" The words were not loud, but they carried. Emily felt her cheeks warm. She pressed her folder tighter against her lap and tried to steady her breath. She reminded herself why she was here: not to compete with appearances, but to show her heart, her mind, her willingness to work. Still, the sting of their laughter lingered. When her name was called, she rose carefully. She wished, just for a moment, that her shoes would not squeak against the floor, that no one would see them as she walked past. But the truth could not be hidden. The seam tugged at every step, a quiet reminder of her place among people who seemed so much more polished. The interview room was large but warm, with tall windows letting in gentle light. At the long table sat 3 managers, each with papers spread before them. But at the head of the room was Richard Hayes, the CEO himself. His presence was calm, not commanding, yet it filled the space in a way that made everyone else seem smaller. Emily greeted them with a quiet smile and took her seat. She folded her hands carefully to stop them from trembling. The questions began simply: her background, her experiences, her studies. Emily answered softly but clearly, choosing each word with care. She spoke of the small company where she had worked before, the long hours balancing multiple roles, the lessons she had learned about patience and persistence. She admitted where she lacked experience but emphasized her eagerness to grow. At times, her voice wavered, but when she spoke of her passion about organizing, about helping people connect ideas, about building something steady out of chaos, it grew steady. There was warmth in her tone, a sincerity that made the managers lean closer. Richard Hayes watched her closely. He did not glance at her folder as much as he studied her face, her posture, the way she carried herself despite the weight of the room. Finally, he asked a question of his own. His voice was deep but not unkind. "Miss Carter," he said, "when you walked in today, what was on your mind?" Emily hesitated. She thought of the laughter, the whispers, the eyes on her shoes. She thought of the long nights she had spent preparing, the mornings she had woken before dawn to work and study. She thought of the dream that had brought her here, the dream of building a better life. Not only for herself, but for her younger brother who depended on her. She took a breath. "I was thinking that sometimes," she said slowly, "we don't always look the part. But I believe that what I carry inside, my work ethic, my dedication, my ability to listen and learn, matters more than what I wear. I came here hoping you would see that." There was silence after she spoke. Not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Richard's eyes softened. He nodded gently, then leaned back in his chair. The managers exchanged glances, but no one spoke for a moment. Emily sat very still, her heart beating quickly. When the interview ended, she thanked them politely and left the room. In the lobby, the other candidates were still waiting, some smiling confidently, others rehearsing silently. Emily sat down again, her folder still on her lap. She did not know what to expect, only that she had spoken her truth. Hours later, when the final round ended, the candidates were gathered together. A manager entered with a clipboard, scanning the room. Everyone grew quiet. "We want to thank each of you for coming," he said. The process was competitive, and the decision was not easy. But today, only one candidate has been selected. The room stiffened. Some sat taller, already certain it would be their name. Emily, still seated quietly at the edge, lowered her eyes. "The candidate chosen," the manager continued, "is Emily Carter." The room fell into stunned silence. A few jaws dropped, a few shoulders slumped. Emily blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "You may meet with Mr. Hayes now," the manager added with a smile. Emily rose slowly, her shoes making that same faint squeak as before. This time, no one laughed. Inside the office, Richard Hayes was waiting. He gestured for her to sit. "Do you know why I chose you?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "Because," he said, "I've seen enough polished shoes and perfect suits to last a lifetime. They can impress for a moment, but they don't reveal much about a person's character. You walked in here with worn shoes, but you spoke with honesty, humility, and strength. That tells me more about the kind of person you are than anything else could." Emily felt her eyes sting, but she blinked quickly. She nodded, unable to find words. Richard smiled kindly. "This company was built on hard work and perseverance. I need people who understand those values, not just people who look the part. I think you'll fit in here just fine." Outside, the city was still humming with its busy rhythm. But as Emily stepped back into the sunlight, her folder in hand, the air felt lighter. Her shoes were still torn, but they carried her with a new kind of pride. And for the first time in a long time, Emily believed not just in the job she had earned, but in the worth she had always carried, even when others could not see it.